evening. My name is Judy Mann. I'm the volunteer coordinator of the New London Community Meal Center, commonly known as the Soup Kitchen, and a volunteer at the St. James Homeless Overnight Shelter in New London. These are my friends Michael Bass and Jason Hodge. They're scientists at Pfizer, and on their own they decided to see what it was like to be homeless for a week. Let me just preface this by saying they have been volunteers at the Soup Kitchen for between 6 months and a year, and they became interested in the homeless, and as I say, they did this completely on their own. So I think you'll be very interested in hearing their experiences. So Michael, let me ask you, what did inspire you to do something like this?
Well, so I joined Groton Pfizer approximately 8 or 9 months ago, and in talking to Jason, found out about the opportunity to volunteer at the Soup Kitchen, and basically worked there for a few weeks. And as I got to know Jason as well, I recounted to him on a previous time that for back in August of last year, I decided to live out of my car for 10 days. I was between places to live, and I also thought it was a challenge and a way to see what it would be like to essentially, be on your own, somewhat homeless, but you have a car to live in. My car was large enough to sleep in. And so,
what time of the year was it, Michael?
It was August, so
August, so you did have the warmth of the summer.
Right, nicer weather. So I basically decided to not only do that for 10 days. Unfortunately, some of the rules were not as strict. I didn't have to worry about what I spent for money, but there's a lot of downtime, and basically what I did was I documented it and put it onto YouTube in order to give some insight to what it might be. In a lot of cases, if people lost their house, they might actually still have a car, so they might use that to the fullest extent without any insurance and maybe having it paid off. So kind of give an insight into how they might do that, and to experience it, to see what kind of hardships you might find. And then I basically showed that to Jason, and through showing that to him, he just came up with the idea. He said, what happens if we were actually homeless? What if we did that ourselves? And I thought about it, and I was like, wow, it's another level. It was challenging ourselves and saying, this is something that would be hard, but it would be to actually really see what it's like. And within that, we said, we want to put in this effort, but this is probably not only going to be hard, but this is some people how they live.
Well, I think it took a lot of courage for you to do that. Jason, can I ask you, what rules did you follow? Were there any particular rules that you had to go by?
Yes, so we actually set up a number of rules months in advance to prep for this, and so we have prior commitments to Pfizer, so we obviously had to work each day, and so we had to be clean and in clean clothes during the day at work. But
how did you shower? Did you do
so
that?
We showered at work in the morning prior to work.
I see.
And then then we would change into the same clothes at the end of work and live on the streets at the nighttime, and we'd have to walk everywhere. And we had a backpack which contained a blanket. It contained our cell phones for emergencies. It contained a flashlight, toothpaste, toothbrush, deodorant, because we still had to maintain,
an appearance at Pfizer,
professional image of Pfizer. So, but some people might think that. So we still showered and we still got to be clean. But when you are homeless, being clean is really the least of your worries. And there's quite a number of challenges that we face, but there obviously was not the long-term issues that the homeless face today. Like they face healthcare issues, childcare issues, all these issues that we didn't actually get to face, but we tried to make it as real as we could.
Not to mention the winter that we didn't.
The winter,
of
yes.
course.
I can't.
So,
yeah.
what would you say was the most difficult part of being outside for a week and not going into your home and eating? Tell us a little about the eating situation. What did you do?
So the eating, surprisingly, wasn't that hard. So I actually forgot to mention, we actually had $10 a day for the first 2 or 3 days, and that actually is surprisingly easy. You don't eat very healthy, but you can eat and you can live. I think we both agree that the hardest thing was the walking and the sleeping. And I mean, you really have no idea how much you value your car and you value your bed.
Where did you actually sleep?
So we slept actually under the Route 95 South Bridge. There was a cement platform that was big and flat. It was actually raised up above the crossroad that went there. And so actually the first night we actually slept in a dugout that we found. It was this little bench about that wide, and it was miserable. And it was raining, but we had some cover from the rain, and then the sprinklers from the baseball field turned on and sprayed us at like
3:30 in the morning.
3:30 in the morning. And
Oh, wow, that was a surprise. Now, did anyone try to help you? Did anyone come over to you? Did any police bother you because you were sort of sleeping in a no-zone sleeping area, I would think? Did anyone
We
bother
were
you?
walking in a place that we shouldn't, on Clarence B. Sharp. It's a major highway,
the highway.
at like, what is it, like 4 in the morning. And a cop pulled us over, and I mean, we didn't really know what to say.
No.
He was like, "What are you doing?" And we just froze for a minute, and then we just told him what we were doing.
And what was his
And
response?
he was actually very receptive. We actually really appreciated that. Not only was he open-minded, but he recognized that we were trying to do something hard and that we didn't have to do this. He actually a few times said "wow" as if he was surprised that we were doing it.
I'm sure he was impressed that you were doing something like that, because
Yeah, it was very cool.
hopefully what you're doing, telling the public what it's like to be homeless, a lot of people have no idea, I think may help people to understand why we have a shelter, why we have a
Absolutely.
soup kitchen.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, Michael, how does this experience change your attitude toward life and people? What did you learn from this, would you say?
Well, I think one of the main things that I learned was some of the very simple things in life were the things that we didn't have, things that you take for granted.
Like a car.
Like your transportation,
Like light.
a bed. I mean, when it really came down to it, you know, our legs hurt from walking. We had to eat bad food, even though we had limited money. But overall, you know, those were tolerable. You know, those could happen to anybody that lives in a house but doesn't have, you know, the food to eat for that day. But the main issues were being able to eat food and being able to sleep. And that's what we just thought was just, you know, rang true of our reasoning for doing this. Was it showed the actual need for having a soup kitchen, having a shelter. Those are two of the things that would, of course, be the first steps in helping someone to get back on their feet, because those were really what we worried about the most in terms of where were we going to sleep until we found it in the first couple days. Where are we going to eat? Are we going to actually walk all the way there? Because it takes quite a while. I mean, those were some major issues.
I think for me, the main thing that it changed for me is you really get a sense of how you get into a routine in your day, and you don't take notice of other people, and you kind of live your own life, and you know, so to go from one extreme to the other and then back again, obviously, you know, for me, I think, and probably the same for you too, just, you know, seeing that